The CCIM chapter of Southwest Florida recently invited me to give a presentation of the fundamentals of solar power and commercial properties. Please enjoy the presentation.
Pleased this evening, and privileged, I dare say, to have Clifford Mitchum with us as our presenter. I first encountered Clifford when he did a presentation in our Cape Coral office, and the stuff that he illustrated about solar energy was really quite exciting. We all have an opinion of what it is, how it works, what you can do with it, can you get it, can't you get it. We're going to find out tonight, and I think the results here are going to be pretty exciting. I asked Clifford earlier in the day if he would give me some kind of a biographical sketch so that I could say nice things about him, and he didn't. So all I can tell you is that he is the absolutely best person in the entire world.
That's great, yes. Well, thank you. I like to just refer to it as I'm a blessed and highly favored individual. I can only say the Lord's the one that guides me, and only through Him am I able to do anything possible. So just want to say thanks on that. But just to give a little bit of my background, I went to school to become an aerospace engineer, so I have a degree in rocket science, so I can officially say I'm a rocket scientist by degree. So I can definitely say that. I've been working with renewable energy since I graduated school. I first began working with a wind turbine manufacturing company, and then I moved into aviation, working with recycling aircraft parts. And then I worked with aviation chemicals that were more environmentally friendly. They had low VOCs, volatile organic compounds, so they weren't as harsh for people to handle them, breathe around them, and the like there. When that company got purchased, they brought in their own salespeople and said, "Hey, Clifford, have a nice day." So I started looking at my roots, and I saw that we're in the Sunshine State. Solar power has come a long way just in the last 10 years. So I began working in that industry with a company called Crew, and that stands for Clean Renewable Energy Worldwide. So what I've been doing through them is educating and expanding the knowledge and bringing it up to speed for people in the area, particularly people in real estate, because you guys are some of the closest to homes and people that are going to be interested in looking at solar power. Plus, it's important for you to understand the metrics of solar and why it's something that will change the property values and impact the entire community. So just going in from there, the clicker doesn't want to work with my program, so I'll just hand click on that. Crew, we're a member-owned group of advisors, so we advise people on solar and solar energy, and we're expanding into other products in the future. And we work with residential and commercial applications. So what we have as our specialty tool is we partnered with a company called GeoStellar, who was a Sunshot Initiative award-winning company that developed an algorithm that can look at the rooftop from satellite images and determine how much sunlight's hitting that roof to get a strong estimate of how much solar power is available to what that facility can produce. So that program itself was $40 million worth of development and is pretty robust and very comprehensive. So now we do have a national footprint, so it's not a matter if you have a location that is if you have a location that's anywhere in the United States, minus Hawaii and Alaska, we should be able to get you all taken care of, as well as in DC. Oh, I got the dongle. Yeah, outstanding. So that's just the basics of the background. So what I want to get into you all to begin with is just understanding how solar power works and why it has become so significant. Solar energy is what's referred to as distributed power. It means it doesn't have a central location that the power is produced and then transmitted to the source that's going to be using it. Ever since I think it was 1882, where they had the first utility power companies that were burning coal that would heat up water. That water would spin a turbine. The turbine would create electricity. Electricity would travel miles and miles and miles over to your home where it would get used. So solar simplifies that entire process by putting crystals on your rooftop that absorb sunlight. It gets an electron flow. That electron flow from the panels here goes down to an inverter that converts that direct current into alternating current. And then that alternating current comes into your building and it goes through your meter. So now the meter checks how much power the solar panels are producing, and we can go ahead and run our modern technology devices and machines and machinery throughout. So now, what this system connection is called is a grid interconnected system. Most people, when they think about solar power, want to be off-grid. They say, great, I don't need the utility at all, forget them, tell them to go fly a kite. It's not quite that simple. Legislatively, I like to tell people it's impossible. Just don't do it. It is possible. It just tends to be highly expensive and very time consuming to go through it. So to stick with just an interconnected system is a better route to go. So how a grid interconnected system works is that the solar panels will power your building and it'll run your meter backwards, powering your building and your devices. And then when the sun goes down, your meter runs forwards, and it's going to track how much it's running backwards and how much it ran forwards. And generally, for most applications, it's going to run backwards more than it runs forwards. So that way they can use solar power to produce the energy instead of fossil fuels and burning those chemicals and getting the byproducts of pollution from that. Something else with a grid interconnected system, it has what's called islanding. Islanding is a safety feature that's built into the system. In the event of a hurricane or disastrous storm where power is disconnected, the utility would be disconnected and the technician would be working on the line to get it back to being connected. Now, if a building is producing its own electricity, you have a backfeed going to that technician, which could more than likely kill him, which is not good. And particularly in this area, you have a lot of water going around, so that would actually become more of a hazard to everything that's around by that downed area. So with that islanding effect, if the grid were to go down, the building or facility would also go down. So just so that's clear. There are advances that are coming along, and I'm going to touch on those as far as storage, where they would still have power even if that event were to occur. So now, as I mentioned a moment ago about running the meter backwards, when the meter is running backwards, it's producing what is called a net meter defect. The net meter defect is what's going to track how much energy that your system is producing, and the utility does not have to. The utility company then takes that power, redistributes it to the neighbors, to another location, or whatever it is they do through their system. So with that net metering, all of the excess power at the end of the year, they're going to count and tabulate and determine how much you're going to receive as far as compensation for that. So essentially, you get paid for the power that you produce. Generally, not a whole lot of money. I mean, it's not something that people are going to be like, oh my gosh, let me go ahead and buy another home. But it tends to be a couple hundred. Large locations could be in the thousands range. But nonetheless, it's more than you started out with. So that's always a good advantage. So now, storing power. That's where something can be what we refer to more as blacked out, where they're producing enough of their own electricity that they're essentially not in need of the utility company. So that way they're effectively off-grid. And that's done through storing the electricity that the solar panels produce during the day. Now there's multiple types of applications for that storage power. We have utility scale, which is in this box, where you'd have a series of these connecting the location to store the electricity and feed it back into the building. You have, for smaller applications, you'd have an internal storage unit where this one would fit along a wall in a small room or garage, something along those lines. And then we have advancing technology that actually provides power on the individual panels themselves. This one is still emerging and tends to be not cost effective for many applications, but the other two are coming down more and more in price each year. And whenever I'm doing any advising for people, I still tell them hold off maybe just a little bit longer on storage, because the big name that everybody tends to recognize is Elon Musk and Tesla. And they have what they call the Gigafactory. The Gigafactory opened up on July 29th, and it's out in Reno, Nevada. and it is a massive factory for batteries and electrical technology. And once that is actually operating at full capacity, myself and industry insiders tend to predict that it's going to cause a significant drop in battery pricing. So it'll become more affordable for everyone to go with it. Plus, he has a whole program where he's going to be storing electricity for a significant portion of the grid in Australia, and he's already done an island. I don't recall which island it was that he had done that for, but his technology is really advancing and it's creating enough momentum that the entire industry is advancing. So you also have other players entering the market, like Mercedes is coming out with their own battery, Sonnen out of Germany has an established battery, Honda's getting in the game. So there's going to become, as the field gets more crowded, pricing's obviously going to drop. So now, solar systems themselves, as far as impact, they save money. With the current utility, you're going to be paying from the inception of the building till the day that it's no longer working and condemned. Whereas when someone has an application of solar power, there's going to be a time where there's a light at the end of the tunnel where the system is paid off. And they don't have an electricity bill at all for most applications. Now, depending on the size of a roof, or if somebody's doing a ground-mounted installation, how much space they have to create their electricity is going to determine what percentage is actually used from the solar panels and what percentage is used from the utility. So now, a system itself goes for about 25 to 30 years. And in that time frame, it's not producing any pollution for the electricity. Whereas in home applications, for every 1,000 kilowatt hours of energy, there's about 1 million cubic feet of natural gas that is burned, put into our air, that just causes more breathing problems and health issues for everyone involved. In Lee County, we specifically have about 70% of our electricity that's generated through natural gas. And then we have a mix of other burning processes that produce the remaining 30%. As you get further north in Florida, it gets closer to coal and those things, and they have coal ash, and that's something else that North Carolina actually had a large spill where that coal ash contaminated an entire river, turning it yellow. So it's very hazardous as far as the environmental impact in itself. So now the key metric to look at is, by being a pioneer and being one of the first buildings, companies, organizations getting solar, there is tremendous amount of free advertising and free marketing that's going about. A lot of times when I mention solar, first thing people mention is Babcock Ranch. Because Babcock Ranch is the first community that's actually designed the entire neighborhood to run off solar power. So when you look at that same idea as the first company in an area that's going solar power, you have the largest solar power facility in a particular area. These things are mentioned by the media and picked up and become a buzz, and that's truly what's going to make more recognition for a company in the effect of free advertising, which many companies spend thousands of dollars a year just on that, just to get people talking about them, whereas doing something that's going to save the company money, environmentally friendly, and helps everyone involved is going to inherently create a buzz. So now, the politics of solar. This is the thing that's really been most impactful and truly opened the door for solar energy. We had 2 amendments last year that were on the ballots. One was in August, the other was in November. Particularly the one in November was Amendment 1. This is a very onerous amendment, and if anybody was tracking that, I was very involved in the activism and actually led some rallies against it. But what that amendment intended to do was add fees onto going solar, so that, say that you're saving $1,000 a month. Guess how much your fee to going solar would be? $1,000 a month. That's what people were projecting it would do to the market, therefore stifling any development in solar power that was not controlled by the utilities. This amendment failed. That's why I have it struck out. So that was a big win. Thank you for everyone that supported that. Now, the one that did pass, and it passed with over 70% of the voting public that agreed with it, was Amendment 4. Amendment 4 was an amendment that puts into the Florida Constitution the right to have solar power, which we inherently have, but this protects it and allows it to grow further without any involvement. So now that was subsequently followed up with implementation through what was called Senate Bill 90. And the Senate Bill 90 was the actual wording that put everything into action. Now, the key to this is this expands the tax exemption to include commercial properties. For residential, since I believe it was 2008, they've had a sales tax exemption and they've had a property tax exemption. So now this expands that to cover commercial properties as well, so that way it's not going to increase the bottom line or the annual taxes that a facility will make or will pay. This starts in January of 2018. So it's not that let's go ahead and get solar tomorrow, because we'd still be under the old laws and statutes where it would actually impact the property tax of that facility and open it up to a greater barrier of return on investment. So it includes a sales tax exemption of 100%, and then the property tax exemption, this changed after it actually caught the floor of Tallahassee legislators, where originally it was 100% exemption, and it got watered down to 80%. Still very significant, still lowers the barrier of entry, so it's an acceptable win for everyone that's involved. And then it also includes some consumer protections, many of which the people in the solar industry were already doing, and I personally felt it was very redundant, but it wasn't worth fighting to lose the entire amendment just to get that out of it. So those are the key factors that truly are accelerating the viral adoption of solar power for facilities. And this is what's really been the greatest motivator to do that. Because just in general, we can go ahead and see that solar power is the future, particularly in Florida, since Florida has the third highest potential for solar energy out here.
Just say, didn't they write them amendments so confusing that nobody knew what they were?
On Amendment 1, they wrote it so confusing that it felt like if you wrote yes, you were saying you supported solar, and you wrote no, you were against
You
it.
didn't know what you were voting for, most people.
That was a part of it, and that was part of the design of the bill. A lot of that was very convoluted in the sense that they portrayed themselves as a grassroots organization compared to one that was actually grassroots. When you looked at that amendment as it was coming up to the vote, it was not supported by anyone in the industry. It was not supported by anybody that wasn't already connected to the utility companies or had some sort of monetary benefit for them in respect to that. And there was also a hot mic moment where one of the board members for a major utility in this area was actually caught saying bragging about how he tricked voters into voting for it. But luckily, it did fail, so we can put that as a warning sign to remind us that we all need to be diligent in maintaining our support for solar power, and we have to be wise in the information that's put in front of us. The biggest factor is right now, and what's really accelerating everything, is that people are moving from just being supporters of solar to actually being playmakers in the solar game. All right, so the next key factor that is very important to everyone is the return on investment. How is that going to actually impact getting solar power? So the first way to go about it is outright purchase. This actually provides the greatest cost savings now because obviously pricing is going to go up in comparison to the utility. So the longer you wait, the more that will be paid with, depending on the percentage of the utility that is still connected to them. So going from there. So now there's also financing that has become available, which wasn't around several years ago. There's actually companies that have developed just for the solar market to provide financing for them and for businesses. It's very subjective, so it's not that every business qualifies or every plan is to the best advantage to a business, so it's always good to look at all the routes that are available, because in some cases it's better just to get a facility upgrade loan where they can go ahead and, just like if they were getting new equipment, get a loan for that. Sure.
One thing that is important, as you may know, may not know, SBA has a limit of $5 million per borrower or per guarantor. However, if you have a project that is energy efficient and you're going to save 10% or more in energy, that limit goes away, and every project can be 5.5 million. So this borrower can have 4 different buildings, and each one of them can be 5.5, $10 million, and so forth. So that's why you will see in other cities a lot of the car dealerships and so forth, of the $10 million range, $20 million range with SBA guarantees. Yes.
Yeah, it's very individualized for the application that a facility is going to be looking at. And it's also something that large department stores are getting in the game of. As she's describing that, you have Walmart, Target, Staples, Kohl's, IKEA are all beginning to install solar power on the tops of all their buildings. And once January hits and that tax saving comes into play, we're going to see a big rush into that. So it would actually cloud anybody that's local that's going to be going for solar. So that's why it's always good, it's best to put in the planning now, so that way once January hits, everybody can hit the ground running.
So is that also part of IKEA's plan with these small homes, as you see them building solar rooftop with that home? Have you seen that too, that they're starting to?
They are starting to do that. That's more of a diversification.
Okay.
Because everything the tiny home application is one of the products that they're selling in the store.
Right.
The rooftop solar is something they're doing as a company to go into their idea of being more environmentally friendly,
Okay, got
plus
it.
obviously it saves them money. All right. So now, another option that put into play is the property assessed clean energy, which commercial buildings are available to, have access to as well. So what that does, it allows the equity that's built into the property to be used to fund the installation of the equipment. Now, it also includes other environmentally friendly applications like water heaters, impact windows, and different advances that use clean energy. The limit to the PACE program is that it's not in every county. Collier and Charlotte counties have it, Lee County does not. They are still working on some things to expand it, but it's not something that we have right here in Lee County specifically, but for your locations that are in Collier and Charlotte and around the state, it's something to look at for that. So now one of the advantages with getting solar is it's eligible for the Modified Accelerated Cost Recovery System, the MACRS. So now what this does is based on the depreciation of the solar, it allows that money to be written off through the taxes. So that way, again, it makes for an easier long-term investment, and that way they can also save money on it, which dovetails right into the Solar Incentive Tax Credit, or the ITC. The ITC combined with the MACRS, it cuts what the MACRS can do by 15%, because the details of the MACRS is that any other benefits, it has to be 50% added to whatever benefit they're getting from the MACRS. So essentially the MACRS comes out to 85%, since the solar incentive tax credit is a 30% discount from the federal government. Now, Florida itself has no renewable energy profile. So there are some local municipalities that have different benefits, but as a state, there is not an established renewable energy profile, which years ago, it was to the disadvantage of solar, but now has actually become the advantage of solar, because it's forced the market to develop technology that can do the job rather than looking for incentives or subsidies. And as of this moment now, solar is on par with utility power, so you're paying the same one way or another. So why not pay for the one that's not going to hurt the environment, hurt the health of people around, or have any other ecological damage? So the question is, what to do next? When having a facility that you're considering, you need to look at the solar potential. It's a solar assessment. My company will do that, no charge. I'm sure the other solar companies will also do that, no charge. The key is to just look at it. When somebody's looking at it from the investment standpoint, they can obviously see that the numbers work out well. Many installations can have a 6-year to 12-year rate of return on investment, so that way it's paid off and they can move into profit that much sooner. And then anybody that'd like a copy of these slides, let me know, email me, contact me, I can get that available for you as well. So now something else to consider is everything I've spoken about is an up. It's all positive, so it gets that feeling, what's he hiding, what's going on, something's gotta be on the downside. The particular downside for solar is that it needs access to light. And when we have the beautiful foliage around, that's gonna cut the ability of the solar power to actually produce. So any type of shading will have an impact on the production value. particularly in commercial applications, is not so much trees on tall buildings, but like the air conditioner, the roof access, any other materials that are on the roof. They can completely change the configuration of the panels that need to be there. And depending if there's say for like a strip mall application, you have multiple air conditioning units, those are creating multiple shadows. So it's gonna limit the ability of the panels to be installed in particular places. So it's also gonna limit the amount of power that can be produced on that roof. For most applications, even a 10% installation of solar power can be considerable savings on their energy. So it's really just a matter of doing an assessment to determine that and measure out the numbers to see what's most cost effective. All right, so the solar tomorrow, particularly for commercial applications, we have carports that can expand the area for solar power to be produced. Just over a large parking lot, this can be put in so that way they aren't limited to just their roof. And focusing on that also means that there's not need to clear out another area of land that you might have some environmental impact because the burrowing owl's there, or the eagle is nesting there, or it's a runoff area for the wetlands, something to that effect. Focusing on rooftops, which is the applications I'm referring to when I'm speaking about this, is the best way to go because it's the least impactful for the environment. The roof isn't doing anything but just sitting there collecting heat. The solar panels also act as a moderate buffer to the energy that's coming to and hitting the building. So it inherently is going to cause a cooling effect. How much that is, people argue one way or another, but it's something that will be a savings over that time, so it's always an advantage. Another one is this carport application is particularly evident because these are HERC panels. The HERC panels, not only do they get sunlight from the top, but the sunlight that's reflected from the ground is also taken advantage of. So it increases the efficiency of those panels. So it's acting on both sides. So that's another advancement that's coming through in new technology. Plus, it'd be nice to cover your beamer, those that have that.
As a solar energy advisor, I help both commercial and residential properties utilize solar energy. The most important action is to simply go solar. All we have to do is conduct a solar assessment by looking at your current electricity bills to determine your solar options. Email your contact information to the address below, and I'll get back to you on how to move forward with solar energy. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to stay up to date on the pathway to going solar. And as always, I want you to go forth and spread sunshine.